child, and I patted him on his head, and that's all I could do. But what I learned is I did not hate my father anymore. What I learned is what he's going through, I'm going through. He did not have the tools to follow through with it. I did. I'm a different person. I'm a little stronger. He didn't have that capability. Most people do not have that capability. Most people fail in life. Most people do. Life is very difficult. So compassion is the biggest tool anyone can have. If you can learn the art of compassion, you've learned everything you need to know about life. Everything else becomes irrelevant. It really does. So, basically, and you bring, and that was it, Father eventually ended up dying. There was no reconciliation with the rest of the family. It was just, it was a tragedy. But what I learned is, I learned about compassion for other human beings. I no longer hate my father. I understand who my father is, where he came from. I understand the dreams that he had that were good. But I also understand the flaws that he had that were not so good. And I can accept them for both the good and the bad. Now I am free not to repeat the mistakes of the past. I am free now, in regards to my father, not to repeat the mistakes of my past. The mother comes in. Another year later, she's dying on her deathbed. She's a chronic smoker, smoked her whole life, dying of emphysema, refused to quit. We're talking about, Mom, why don't you quit? You got to quit. You got to quit. She couldn't quit. She refused to open up emotionally. This is a woman that, we loved her, but it was a love more in theory than reality because there was no energy exchange. It was a one-way street. My mother did everything right. She was the Virgin Mary, the Crystal Virgin Mary, but empathetically and emotionally, it was not there. She couldn't connect. And she couldn't even connect at the end, and that was a really sad part. Right down to the end, she, in a lot of ways, was in denial about her own death process, and it was very difficult to kind of be around her, and so it was a much different experience from what I had with my father. My father was a bloody mess. My father, was an emotional wreck. Wilhelm Reich said Wilhelm Reich. The psychoanalyst under Sigmund Freud, he loved schizophrenics because schizophrenics had this sort of crazy emotional vulnerability, which was what life is about. You go into the chaos of life, you go into the feeling of life, and it's not necessarily pretty, but that's where the creativity is, that's where the ability to change is. It takes great courage to go into the craziness of life and to survive that gauntlet, to survive what other people think about you. A lot of times in life, I based what I would do in life based on what other people thought of me. I probably lived the first 25 years of my life based on what other people thought of me. It wasn't still when I began to stop caring about what other people thought of me that I began to live life for the first time. Because at the end of the day, there is no one else out there to help you. What other people think is irrelevant. That's an external rule. That's an external law. The law needs to be internalized. You need to bring in love with logic and combine the two, and then utilize them both in a balanced fashion. It's the most difficult balancing act in the world. You go into all logic, you become like Spock on Star Trek. You go into all feeling, you end up in jail. Or you end up a victim. There's no two choices. So you need the mind, and then you need the emotion, and then you need the will. You combine those two, and then you're going to go in a very positive direction. If you're out of balance in one of those factors, then you got to work on your weak point. You can have too much power, you can have even too much love, and you can have even too much knowledge probably, if you call it intellectual knowledge or dry mental search stuff. what I've seen is, recently it seems like this Halloween is the point of, the Devil's Day. Well, it's also a resonance to the destruction of Atlantis, okay, October 31st. My grandmother happened to die on Halloween, but it's when Atlantis died, the day Atlantis died. So All Souls Day is a resonance where more souls died in one day than any time in history. So it's a very negative belief system that runs through. It's an anchor point that runs through the consciousness of man. It's probably the biggest negative anchor point we have during the course of a year. So you have a lot of traumatic things that happen in October, which, stock market crashes, I related before, the Knights Templar, Friday the 13th, the origin of Friday the 13th is when the Knights Templar were arrested and basically slaughtered in one day in 1187 or whatever it was, 1113. So a lot of negative events are anchored around these negative belief systems. And so you have people that can shape this energy. If you're a black magician, it's like party time. You can take this energy and you can shape it and create certain events in the world. 9/11 was a negative ritual act of murder. So it was an attempt to anchor in a negative reality context. You're anchoring in, you're getting a mass trauma, and then people's attention is focused on that, and then you shape the energy into an outcome. You create the war on terror as a byproduct of shaping the energy. So you get your media centers and you just start pumping out the prefabricated propaganda, and then everyone, since they're not conscious and awake, they become receivers of this information, and then they unconsciously create the dynamic of a new world order. War on terror, Patriot Act laws. People are not awake, and that's why they're in prison. The only way out is to wake up spiritually, where you become a receiver and a projector. You become your own magician. Okay, so this Halloween, there's all this stuff going down. It seems like all the banking systems, all this stuff is going down. And then, we're doing a little magic act ourselves, because we like to have fun. I'm not really going to discuss about it on air, but let's just say a lot of wonderful things happened right after Halloween. And so I perceive that we're now firmly on a positive reality track where we're going to have a lot of good things happen externally in the world at large. But that came through a confrontation, a chaos, a self-surrender. It's a self-examination process. We're not fighting devils out there. We're fighting ourselves. And so when you can face the injured parts in yourself and you can accept them and integrate them, then the thing just evaporates again. And then it's like the dawn of a new day, a new world. You enter a new world. I don't know how that mechanism works, but I know all of a sudden, I wake up the next day and things are different. There's an alteration. The way the dynamics that people are interacting with me, it's different. Now, this is a process. It's not an event. So the event of Halloween or whatever is still a part of a bigger process. And so you have overlapping trends that happen in your life. You have overlapping negative worlds that are evaporating. At the same time, you have new worlds that are being created by an overlay of new belief systems and ideologies. As your lower fields begin to get cleansed by the bioresonance machines, you begin to bring in different dynamics in your life. That does not mean that the patterns are still not there. That means that you've loosened up and allowed other patterns to come in to compete with you. And then there's crisis points where you have to choose which direction you want to go in. Do you want to go left or do you want to go right? And these choices are always available through the course of times. You can stop at any time and get off the train. And then progress stops or halts or maybe goes backwards. God writes straight with crooked lines. That was a saying on the bathroom wall that I grew up with. And it's a saying that I kind of hang my hat on. And it gets me through bad times. There are a number of times where I thought my world was going to fall apart, and then something positive happens. There's a number of times where I was on the verge of a breakdown, and it was actually a breakthrough. It's fine line between breakdowns and breakthroughs. Some of the most difficult parts of my life were